The inner child is the gatekeeper between us and infinity. No matter how much spiritual knowledge we develop, we must connect with our inner child if we want to actually embody multidimensional consciousness. The inner child serves a cosmic role and is the single most important archetype in the spirit of this age. To try to override this aspect with our mental capacity will only create massive divisions between the best of our intentions and the truth of our being. So today I'm going to be sharing what the inner child is, what the cosmic role is that it serves in our spiritual awakening, why it's so important to our spiritual awakening, and at the end of this video, I will share with you the 3 most potent steps to begin healing the inner child. Just like what we refer to as the shadow is a composite character, meaning it's made up of various parts of ourselves that we have denied and then get stored within this aspect of the unconscious known as the shadow, the inner child is also a composite character. It's the aspect of us that recorded all of our childhood traumas. So it too is made up of various parts and different ages, including all pre-verbal traumas, the ones we suffered before we were able to communicate. Even before birth, the inner child remembers everything. Every single thing that you can't imagine is recorded within the inner child and is stored within the deep tissues of our visceral body. But this aspect goes further back than even that, because the inner child actually has cosmic origins. It's not simply from this lifetime, although we engage with it and approach it as though it's only within the parameters of this one life. The inner child is actually a fractal. It holds a primordial wound that then is condensed into a mini version, or what is called a macrocosm. So when we begin the healing process, the macrocosm of information that is stored within the inner child means that we are healing far more than our trauma within this life. The inner child serves as a portal that's allowing us to access and heal the wounds we had even before this life. The universe designed it this way so that even people who aren't spiritual can still evolve. The wound that the inner child is holding from before this life is abandonment, and how each person relates to this ancient separation is different. It will be interpreted through our own unique filters. This is actually a very deep subject to get into, so let me know in the comments if you would like me to make a separate video specifically on this topic of cosmic abandonment, and I could explain this concept in more depth. So on top of our inner child holding the memory of our trauma from this life within the cellular structure of our body, it's also the microcosm of existence, hyper aware that it is traveling at warp speed through infinity, and it feels very, very alone. It has nothing to hold on to, no assurance, and until we give it the security it has always sought, this fractal is going to continue to echo and replicate this overwhelming shock, because that's what fractals do. Over and over again, we will see dominant themes of an emotional state play out in our lives in one form or another that are held within the inner child. Some will be very apparent. We may even already be well aware of. Other themes we may be semi-conscious of, but some we may not even recognize as reoccurring, since long before we are verbal, the body-mind is already structuring the microbiome, regulating our methylation pathways, and informing our physiology. So now we are getting a deeper picture of just how visceral the inner child is. It's to the point where if you truly had an aversion to this concept, you would still be able to appreciate it as the inner child simply being the emotional body. It's mute. Its language is sensory. It does not operate or speak the same way that the intellect does. This is very important to know, because many times we approach the inner child as though they need to meet us where we are at. We try to gently talk reason with them so they can get on our level, or see some bigger picture, or understand some higher meaning to the pain they hold that they are currently not able to see. And all of this is very inappropriate. because the inner child needs to be felt and witnessed, not reasoned with. We don't mean to be inappropriate. It's not our intention at all. But the approach of connecting with them through our adult reason is not what our inner child needs. The adult aspect of us wants to reach forgiveness prematurely or seeks to maneuver the inner child into a state of letting go. This puts enormous pressure on the inner child and only adds further insult to injury. In fact, this aspect of us constantly is put in situations where it is asked to be the bigger person, when it's specifically not meant to be the bigger person. But being put in inappropriate situations is unfortunately a repeated wound for the inner child. Like for those who had upbringings where they were their parents' confidant or a counselor, or if they were left to fend for themselves in highly abusive environments. Because the inner child resides both within our subconscious and the unconscious, they are the gatekeeper to vast reserves of untapped wisdom from both of these sources. Many of us are aware of the positive impact our lives will have by connecting with the power of the subconscious and unconscious, so as to manifest a soulmate, generate abundance, or to find our soul's purpose. So naturally, we approach our inner child for their wisdom and counsel. We do this out of respect for them. It's a very innocent misstep. And yet, this too is inappropriate. We want the inner child to be our healer, or at least be healed already. But the appropriate relationship with the inner child is that we are the divine guardian, and we are the compassionate witness they never had, but always dreamed of. They only have eyes for us. We are their everything, their whole macrocosm. And the most precious medicine we could ever give them is to be understood and validated exactly as they show up, with absolutely no strings attached on our ends. This is the experience they never had. All of our generational trauma up until this point led to caretakers or parental figures ranging from outright abusive to simply not having the capacity to offer a child unconditional love. The inner child's deepest wound is the wound of never being fully and deeply seen for who they are at their core. So not only are they the aspect of us that comes into this life overwhelmed by an existential sensation of abandonment, but then it also goes without its deepest need within this lifetime being met as well, which is to be seen for who they are without projections, filters, or motive. So the first and foremost step to begin healing the inner child is to fully see our inner child just as they are. Set the intention to meet with your inner child while you're in a meditative state. When you do this, it's important to know that you're not always going to be shown the same age every time, and that's fine. Whatever age they present themselves to us in that session is the aspect that we most need to be in touch with in that moment. And observe the inner child, just as he or she is. This doesn't need to be spectacular or transcendent, but the more you watch them, you may begin to see into a deeper layer of their being. What we are doing is being the safe space for them to be exactly as they are and seen as that. It's universal that the inner child is angry with us when we first start to connect with them, and that's an entirely appropriate response to being neglected and having fend for itself through their existence. But the more we are able to show up for them and be their safe space where they are deeply seen and allowed to be however they feel, they will begin to start opening up to us. The second step is another form of inner child meditation. In this version, we find out what the inner child needs, and then we give them that experience. This is very healing to the inner child because a lot of times our needs were made out to be trivial or it wasn't even safe to have needs. But because the true nature of reality is quantum, we can still give our inner child what it needed in its energetic form. For instance, if someone grew up dirt poor and did not have much clothes to wear, food is a higher priority at this level of poverty. And so we can give them whatever resources they needed at that time in our meditation with them. In this case, we could take them shopping for clothes and let them pick out whatever they want to wear to express who they are. Make sure, though, to allow them their own reactions to this whole process, rather than go through the motions and have them act out exactly how you want them to reply, almost as if we are acting a scene out with Barbie dolls. Instead, take them through this whole experience of being able to shop for clothes and pick out whatever they want and have that abundance. And instead, allow them to have their own experience of what's happening during this whole process. And watch them so that you can respond as well from a genuine space. You can do this for anything the inner child needs, and anything applies as a need, so we don't have to determine whether or not they truly need something. That's not our job. This is not only for tangible resources, but also for the emotional resources that they didn't receive as well. And the third, and by far the most important step to begin healing the inner child, is to give them the security that they never have had. This is the secret to healing the inner child. You need to talk to your inner child like you are a stage 5 clinger. I mean it. Everything that is super cringe and low-key toxic to say to your life partner, like, we're gonna be together for all of eternity, or I will never leave you, is exactly how you need to speak to your inner child. Because remember, the inner child is aware that we are traveling through eternity. If that's not daunting enough, it's traveling through eternity alone, overwhelmed, and abandoned. The inner child wants to know that it's not alone through all of this, that it will never have to be alone again through all of eternity. So speak with your inner child as though you both are 2 stage 5 clingers, and give it a level of security that it never even thought it would have had in its wildest dreams. The inner child is the most crucial aspect we hold. If it's not healed and integrated, then the network of our entire being will not feel safe enough to continue to awaken and expand. It holds the key between us and infinity. I hope this has helped you connect with your microcosm. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.